Hey everybody out there, it's Kyle with Driveline Baseball. I just want to talk a little bit about injuries. I apologize for the poor webcam quality, but that's all I have right now, and I'll have to do. I really wanted to get this video out over the weekend. There's been a rash of arm injuries. Obviously, if you we have a position statement on injuries on our website. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check it out. Links in the description right down there, so definitely go take a look. I want to talk a little bit just about the global phenomenon of injuries in MLB and on the amateur scene. A couple things that I want to address. So what are we doing at Driveline Baseball to address them? We're doing a bunch of different stuff. Last week we did a arm care webinar with Randy Sullivan, Ron Wolforth, Flint Wallace, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Jim Wagner was on the call too. And Jim's son has had Tommy John surgery, and I thought it was really good to get his perspective. What we're doing to address it, we're trying to collaborate with guys like Randy, Ron Wolforth, that kind of thing, and share ideas on what works and what doesn't, and what things have gone well and what haven't. I think that's a huge thing. Networking is really important. I think a lot of people in biomechanics try to get a really closed-minded approach and not very experimental, very rote. Like, this is our method, this is the box I'm in, and I'm not willing to look past that. And I think that's really unfortunate. And we don't have that view at all. We also have stuff like EMG sensors, a full biomechanics video lab, of course, constant experimentation, force plates, that kind of thing. We're trying to collect as much objective data as possible. Radar guns on weighted balls and that kind of thing. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. I think the process could always improve, but the process of improving is always going to be a part of our culture, and I would recommend that that's a good strategy in life, period. The next thing I want to talk about, and the reason that I made this video, is what is uncontrollable. I think that's really important. We've had kids in our program, out of the hundreds, who have had arm injury. We haven't had a surgery yet, but we have had kids with serious injury, and at some point in the future we will have kids that will need surgery. And does that mean it's our fault? And does it mean that it was any one thing? I'd like to think not, and I doubt that's the case. There are people who do everything right in life and still have bad things happen to them. Cancer, cars hit them. This is very difficult to understand. Anything that has a random factor and a deterministic factor is inherently difficult to grasp. It's why things like Las Vegas exist. I used to be a professional gambler for many years. And having spent a lot of time in casinos and on the internet gambling, it's pretty much how you make your living. It's very hard to grasp the fact that something can be random and controllable. If it's not 0% or 100%, it's somewhere in the middle. I think people have a very difficult time with that. It's why people have a tough time understanding the stock market, gambling, batting averages in baseball, that kind of stuff. It's why baseball itself is so difficult. There's a large component of luck that is hard to quantify and really understand and grasp. Even if you do totally understand the luck factor in something like blackjack, it's human nature to have a difficult time with that. And so that's part of it. We can only control the factors that we can control. We can measure a lot of data, train properly, rest properly, and so forth. And we can do everything right and still something bad can happen. It's not about building a bulletproof pitcher. It's not about completely eliminating the risk. I don't think that will ever happen. I think it's about minimizing the risk as best you can, and even in that regard, we don't know the error bars of luck, and so that is very hard to grasp for people. And I suggest you think of it that way. It's not predictions. We call them projections. It's much like the sabermetrics movement. We're not predicting that someone will be injured or predicting that this program is better. We're projecting that this program is better, that based on all the data that we have, guys that go through our program stay healthier, guys that go through other programs stay healthier, guys that go through some other organizations tend to hurt themselves more. That doesn't mean there's a causal relationship, but it does mean that there's some interesting data that can be collected. Talking about sabermetrics, it plays a huge role in effectiveness. I got into thinking about baseball primarily because of Moneyball. I think a lot of people did out there my age. 30 years old. And when it came out, the big factor for me was understanding that college-educated people who never really played baseball could have an effect on the game, and that was really interesting to me. And so when biomechanics experts, scientists, other people, researchers, discuss things like, say, we don't think it's a good idea to throw max effort, or say stuff like pitchers who are good throw various pitches at various speeds at various locations, there is no real evidence for that. Sabermetrics, when we're talking about arm injuries, people need to stay in their lane, or what they're talking about. When I discuss injuries in this box, then those are going to be factors that we can measure. EMG stuff, video stuff, pitch effects data, pitch counts, height, weight, laxity tests, that kind of stuff. But to discuss things like effectiveness without quoting real research or consulting people that really understand the game, Tango Tiger, Russell Carlton, MGL, Bill James, Pete Palmer, name the guy, right? And it's very distracting to me, I think, and it undermines the research that's being done. And sabermetrics are the only people, sabermetricians are the only people out there, to me, that are really interested in open data, like actually understanding things. And so to me, the sabermetrics movement will play a very large role in reducing injury to pitchers. Very few other people are interested in that type of methodology. So where are we going from here? What are we going to do? Well, after I was an internet gambler and prior to being a baseball guy, I've done a lot of machine learning, a lot of artificial intelligence work for various companies, and some of my work appears on the Hardball Times in that regard. And so we will continue with that research, constantly work on the EMG sensors, that kind of thing, constantly collect data and experiment. We like to call it iteration at Driveline Baseball. We're constantly iterating. We're not happy with this. We want to go here, and to get there we need to make very, very many small steps. What works, what didn't. Test things over 6-week periods, 4 to 6 to 8 to 12, whatever period of time. Predefined start-end times. What can we control? What works? What didn't? Okay, this worked, this didn't. This gets added, this gets removed. We don't know on this. This needs to be studied some more. This is a giant pain in the ass. There's no question about that, but that's how science is done. It's not done in a black box. It's not done by releasing these black box reports. It's done by iteration and trying to be as open as possible. Unfortunately, this being a business, we can't constantly open source all of our data. It just is what it is. And I apologize for that, but that's kind of how it is. I come from a very strong free and open source background, and I appreciate what it's done, and we try to give back as much as we can. However, some of the stuff must remain proprietary. I have to pay my mortgage and stuff, and so that's just how that is. Up to the next part is what I would request from everybody is that it requires independent thought. We will all need to pull on the rope to help reduce the chance of injury to pitchers, especially youth pitchers. It's not enough to, and actively bad, in my opinion, to listen to what I have to say, just because Kyle Bodie says it, just because Dr. Glenn Fleisig says it, just because Dr. James Andrews, Dr. Kremchek, Ron Woolforth, Dick Mills, Mike Marshall, name the guy. It's not okay to listen to any one of us. The people who are successful that I look up to, like Ron, Randy Sullivan, and those guys, Matt Blake, Eric Cressy, most of those people are very open-minded, and they are interested in other viewpoints, especially perhaps ones that run counter to their viewpoint. Most people are willing to reject things that don't fit in their mold, and that's never served me well. Dr. Marshall and Paul Nyman, both just like me, both think I'm an academic hack, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that I can't learn something from them. People confuse the personal with the professional in this industry and in life, and I don't think that is going to serve any of us well. So we all need to pull on the same rope. Just because someone else disagrees with you doesn't mean it's not worth listening to them, and in fact, usually it means that it is worth listening to them extra closely. Mark Ripito of Starting Strength has a great quote. Kind of butcher it here, but paraphrased, it's what I've learned in life is that I really need to constantly evaluate what I think is true, and especially so the things I know to be true. And that's where we're going with injuries. This is constant reiteration of the things that don't actually matter, or may not matter. We saw this in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s with the sabermetrics movement, with Pete Palmer and Bill James and those guys getting so much static, and how hard it was to overcome that. And I think that's where we are with injuries and performance. So it's going to require lots of independent thought on your own, not listening to me exclusively, and not, there's plenty of people who disagree with me that I believe are worth listening to. And so that's the biggest message that I think I would get across. So thanks for listening. Hopefully I didn't ramble as long as Trevor Bauer did in his video. But it's worth listening to, and I'll link that in the comments as well. So I hope to hear from you, and I'd love to read your comments, and check us out on the blog at drivelinebaseball.com, and follow us on Twitter at DrivelineBases. Thanks for watching.